Hey everybody, welcome to Today's Glory Shopworks, and on this episode we're continuing the rebuild on our C6 transmission. It's taking a lot longer than I expected, of course, but you run into little things along the way sometimes. And since we're not doing this inside of a shop that's built geared towards transmissions, parts tend to take a little while back and forth, you know. Anyway, trying to do this correctly, it's taking extra time. But here's an update where we're at right now. So last we had left it, we had a transmission hanging on here with a broken case, and it had a deviation in the case as well. Since then, over there, that's the transmission. So that case is junk now. Could be saved if it was absolutely necessary, but doesn't have to be. So now that case has been stripped down. All of the parts are laid out here. Everything's organized and ready to go. And this is our new case. I finished painting it last night. It's all set up, paint's dry, surfaces are cleaned up good enough to get going, and it's time to assemble. Now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put you through reassembling from the bottom up. After the credits, we will be back where we were when the case broke, basically, and when we had problems with our clearances on our clutches. As you know, in the last video, I did all the measuring, found out which snap ring to get. We got them all ordered in, got the snap rings in, and we've got a beautiful clearance on our direct drum, or high reverse drum, whatever you want to call it. I call it direct. Anyway, from there, I'm going to assemble the transmission to that point where we were ready to put the direct drum in, and that's where we're going to pick up this video. Stay tuned. Alright guys, here we are. We are back. We've got everything stacked back in, clutch, pistons, air checked, and we are back right where we started when I cracked the case. We're good to go now. Like I was saying in our last video, we redid the hub. I ended up changing the drum, and through selective process with 3 different drums and snap rings and yada yada, we got, I can't remember if it was 27 or 24 thou, but we are well within our spec and our drum. We're going to have good, tight, long living performance now. So this is the next part to go in, and let's just keep on going here. You always have to run it around and check. Now see if I can bring in a little bit closer here. Right here we're not seated down all the way. If we move it, not seated, not seated. There on this side we are. That means that our clutches are not evenly spaced yet, so we just gotta mess around with it a little bit. Try and get that happy. That felt good. And now we can see full engagement, all the way around. We just check again. We don't want any surprises, but that is seated right down, good to go. Now, there's no rocket science to working on automatics. A few simple procedures, the odd special tool depending on the transmission you're working on. I can tell you, working at dealerships, there's a host of special tools out there that you just don't need to do the job. But there's a couple that make things pretty nice. So this guy is assembled to the point where I got to put the band on. I'm going to check my band assembly and adjustment, and I'll be back. Okay, one thing you didn't see me do, and that's because I had no plans on doing it, was this is the lever for the intermediate servo. The intermediate servo actuates the band, the second gear band or intermediate band, whatever you want to call it. And this is the pivot for it. This is the shaft that it pivots on. And here's the cup plug that goes in to retain it. Now, the reason why I had to pull it out of this case is because somebody had put the wrong sized cup plug in. And I have no idea why. But because of that, they had siliconed the hole in the pump area, in the bell housing area, and again, I still don't quite understand why. Probably they lost the plug, or they couldn't get this last plug. Now I'm going to reuse these. They are a press fit, but I'm going to use a little bit of blue thread locker on them. So here's our shaft. Now, I'll try to zoom you in here a little bit. Here, this hole right here is where this shaft goes in. Just a little bit of lubricant on the shaft, nothing crazy because it's going into a machined hole, so it's not going to keep very much, and it doesn't need very much. Right here we have a wear spot. The other side does not. So this wear spot goes against the piston for the servo. I'll get you up there a little bit. There. So here's the area this sits. This goes against the piston. This side grabs onto the band, or well, the band lever. Now we just push it all the way in. There we go. Nice and deep down the hole. Now I assume they use both plugs. One, the longer, skinnier one, is to retain that rod so it doesn't stay down, and this one is actually the sealing plug. I do wish I had a new one in the kit. Did not come in the kit, but again, I will just simply make do and get them in there with some sealer on them, and we'll be just fine. So this is just blue Loctite. We'll put a little bit of it around and around this one. And then, I'm not going to be able to show you. Well, hang on a sec. I like showing you guys stuff. You're pretty cool. Let's get going. So we take this guy that's got blue thread locker on him. He's the skinny one. We drop him down in there first. Now it stops at the top edge. There is a shoulder in there, but we take our punch, just a simple pin punch, and we don't have to drive it crazy. There, you hear the difference? That's it. That's all you need. Same thing. We take our sealing plug. We got a little bit of blue thread locker on it. Now I'm using blue because I actually do want the thing to come back apart at some point. Or if it has to come back apart, we have the option. I don't want to use red or an actual permanent style sealer. There are many options out there, but but that would be not cool. So again, we just press it in. Done. That's him. It's not going anywhere. And now that I know they have both of those in there, now I will take and wipe in just the tiniest bit of RTV sealant. I was deciding whether or not to do that, but honestly I should, because there is still I just don't want it to seep out. So blue thread locker to retain them, a little bit of RTB sealer in the end just to dispel any forms of seepage. Last thing you need is it to look like your front pump or your converter hub is leaking because you got a little bit of sweat in there, and then you got to pull the transmission back out or pull the engine to fix it. Uncool, and I'm not going to do that to my customer. So now next up, we're going to install the band. Now I took the new band out of the kit. I've soaked it in my ATF. Now some bands have different ends. This one, they're symmetrical. So, well, symmetrical. They're the same on both ends. So we can put them in and not worry about getting it in the wrong location. So the band is in, well lubricated. Next up, we have to put in our linkages and our adjustment bolt. Alright, so I guess we should get at our servo apply piston. We've already cleaned everything, and it is this simple. That's all it is a rubber seal, reusable. They never give it in the kit, you gotta buy it separately. But as long as you can see no major nicks or anything on it, lube it up and put it in. Slides in just like that. Spring goes on, and here we have it. Doesn't get much simpler than that. There. So we dig out our 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they are 1, 2, 3, 4 for the apply servo. Put a little bit of lubricant around the O-ring, nothing on the gasket, just the O-ring to aid in assembling this. I mean, if you get it on the gasket, it's not the end of the world, but we try not to. There's one area that has this extra plug off, and it's a vent for the one side. You can aid in assembly by putting your spring on top of the center port and just push it in, start your bolts. Once you get 2 started, the rest is easy. Alright, so our torque spec is 14 to 20 foot-pounds for the servo cover. So I like to go on the max side, because if there is a problem, then you want to know about it. 20 it is. Because now we're going to start with our threaded bolt. Now, this thing does have a seal on the nut, and that's to avoid any seepage in the case. I've backed it out fairly far, well past where it needs to be. And we're just going to start with screwing it in place lightly. There's our tip sticking through. He's going to get this guy on him, but first we're going to put the other side on. And this is all it is. There appears to be no orientation, so we're not worried. Squeeze our band together to help center it up. And there we go. From there, we hold our other plug in place and start adjusting that bolt in. Now once it makes contact, we're pretty much there. Because that's too tight as it is. We have to do an adjustment on that. Alright, here's the front face of our pump. Now, I took the liberty of pounding out the seal. Pretty easy. You go in beside the bushing, don't nick the bushing, hold it on the edge of your bench, and just tap it out. Comes out pretty easy. New one taps in good with a soft base hammer. I'm not going to bore you with replacing a front hub seal, or front pump seal, converter seal, whatever you want to call it. It's in, it's good, it's ready to go. And on the other side, so we left this guy. We need to put some lubrication in there so the pump starts to pull right away, just like any oil pump in a regular engine. And we don't want dry starts on the pump at all, or the pump bushing. Then we can take our pieces, drop them in, give it a little bit of lube on the top and on the gears. I like these style pumps, these gear rotor pumps, over the vane style ones and like a Turbo 350 or 400, 700 R4. They seem less prone to breakage. I mean, I've seen them wear out, but at the same time, this seems to work pretty nice. It's the same thing. Here's our inner gear, and we give it a little bit of lube, slather them up, and then just kind of, I like to just run the two of them together a little bit, make sure all the gear lube is mashed onto the teeth, and we know we've got a good, safe start. So, here's our stator support. I say stator because inside the torque converter, these gears mesh with a part that does not move. It supports one half the turbine assembly and allows the rest of the converter housing to run around it. And through, it's called shear strength, I believe, or fluid shear, the turbine housing creates movement for the transmission. Now, that's a whole nother ball game for another day. But we're going to install our two steel seals, and these guys interlock together just like that. I don't know if you even see it, but I'll do it this way, and they interlock together. You just push one over top of the other, push them in, done. Just like that. And there's no need for worry about orientation either. And we can put our, what are we going to call it, hub thrust washer in. I'll put a little bit of lube on it like always, just to make sure it stays in place while assembling. And there's the one little nub here, which coincides with this little gap right here. Inside the stator support there is a bushing, and that is to hold the input shaft steady, so we don't want to forget to lubricate that, and we want to lubricate the outside of our plastic thrust washer. I've seen these guys overheated and melted, so we definitely don't want to starve it for any particular reason. Now I just have to pick the orientation. You see these 5 holes? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On the stator support there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Give it a little wipe. We've already got the gear lube, so we don't have to lube this. Do it if you want to. And then we can line it up. We grab our 5 pump bolts. Make sure we got the right ones, which we don't. Oh yeah, here they are. And then I just like to take it, lift it up, hang it on the edge of the bench with my hip, and then I can line up the bolt holes. And you just got to start them Once they're all started, then you can run them down. If you've done your job right, the threads are clean, everything's good, and they'll just zip right together. Stator support to pump, 12 to 16 foot-pounds, and then front pump to transmission case, 16 to 30 foot-pounds. So we're going to do 16 and 30. Three, 4, 5. I have to count out loud, and that way I know for sure I'm not forgetting any. Okay, next up is our gasket for the pump. Gasket, and there are 2 cutaways, and the bolt holes have to line up with these fluid passage holes. So now that we know we have this side correct, we flip it over, put it in our case. There we go. So again, we don't want to try and force that seal in dry. It will fight us every millimeter. Just give it a little brush. Don't gotta go crazy. There we go. Now a little more on these guys. Now there are also 2 more sealing rings, and they go in this bore right here. So good idea to lubricate that, or else again, fighting to get her together. There we are, 2 5/16 fine thread coarse bolts. Sorry, 2 5/16 coarse thread bolts. Again, you could cut the heads off and you could taper them and use them as alignment dowels. I just assume to use them as alignment dowels this way. Make sure you got them screwed in nicely. And then we can give a few light little taps and everything should pop right in place. Or lift it up and drop it down and your rings will seat in. So all I was doing is I was catching on the rings. Now that that's in there, we can give a few little taps. And we are seated. If everything went right, we can take our locating bolts out, alignment bolts. If I was doing these transmissions every day, yes, I would turn these into alignment bolts. As I said before, 30 foot-pounds. Alright, we are going to lube up our seal just a little bit, and then we're going to lube up this final bushing for the input shaft, and we want to slide in our input shaft. Now, just so you know, there is a long set of splines and a short set of splines. Long set of splines go in the transmission. There we have it. Bottomed out completely. There is one more measurement, is end play. And I can measure our end play. Let me get the spec and I'll meet you back here. I have my dial indicator set up, check my end play, found the place they want me to pry against in the gear train, and I'm getting right about right about 79 to 80 thou. The spec is 8 thou to 44 thou. So with all the jacking around with clutch clearances and making sure that we got the selective snap rings in place and everything's good to go that way, we can't stop. We have to make sure we have the proper end play. Too much slop in the gear train will allow abnormal wear. It's probably what took out that rear thrust washer, this guy. Probably beating it around too much, going back and forth, and it wore the nubs off that held it in place. So knowing that, we can't do it. So with the two other transmissions I have tore apart right now, I have two other thrust washers. Now you adjust your end play by the thrust washers in the transmission, but the only one that's adjustable truly to buy, as far as I recall, is the pump one, the back of the stator support. So it's not horrible. I have to pop the pump out. Alright, so my battery died there, and then I went and had a snack. I gotta eat. And where we're at right now is we had 80 thou end play, which is too much. We're 36 thou over spec. That means I have to pull the pump back out. If I had thought this was an issue, what you would normally do is put the gasket in, but you'd leave the O-ring out. Hopefully I've got enough lube on it, the O-ring will slide out. That would be nice. But I've got the two other thrust washers, and we're going to measure what's in there, then measure these guys and pick whichever one is going to get us closest to our goal, hopefully within our goal. Alright, original thrust washer. Now, I should add here, I probably built this problem into the case, but I say that with a bit of caution. Reason being, I changed the case. So it could have had a different machine clearance than the old case did, and this could have been just fine. But we also ran into where the clearances did not appear to have been checked when the transmission had been assembled previously before I got my hands on it. Hence the reason with the bad clutch clearances on the forward or direct clutch or whatever. So without further ado, let's measure this guy. Okay, so we're going to go on the small side, say 54 thou. That one seemed to be an anomaly. Yes, it would take up difference, but now we're going to go to our brass thrust washer, or steel with brass backing, and it is a 74, 73, 74 we'll say. Okay, 74. And then this guy. Ooh, hey, we have 103 thou, 102 thou, 102 thou. Okay, so we need, on the 59 thou, we wanted 8 to 44 thou. So if we subtract 30, if we add 36 thou to the 59, that'll get us what we want on the high side. Where am I going with this? I had it all spec'd out in my head. Oh yeah, we had 80 thou. So we were 36 thou over the max. So if we added 36 to the 59 equals 6 and 9 is 15, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 95 thou would get us at the minimum spec. If we go with 102 thou, That's another 7 thou on top. So that should bring us to 44 plus 44 minus 7, 37 thou. Should get us right within the happy for the end play. 37 thou. So the thickest guy, Badoom. And we're going to put him on there. We'll do the backside. 6, 7. Put in our input shaft again. Remember, long splines in the case. Back on with our dial indicator. Okay, dial indicator's on. Here we go again. Oh, got it zeroed out. We are sitting at 37. I was dead on. Look, huh? Did it right and the math worked. Crazy. So yeah, he goes in there. Now truth be told, I already threw away the modulator valve. It might have had that stuck in it. I had to grab this from one of the other transmissions, and I feel like an idiot because I didn't pay attention to it. I assumed a new one came with the kit. Couldn't find one in the kit either. Alright, now we put this guy in. Ooh. Might as well show you guys what I'm doing, hey? A little bit of lube on that valve. And we just slide her up in place nice and gently. There we are. Got our little plate and our bolt. Now honestly, I couldn't find a torque spec. Alright, so you ever get a torque spec you don't trust? The only one I can find in the whole list is diaphragm to case, which that is a vacuum diaphragm, but it's 25 to 35 foot-pounds. Not inch-pounds, foot-pounds. And that 5/16 bolt is barely a half-inch long. I don't believe there's enough thread engagement to allow me to get 25 to 35 foot-pounds in aluminum. So I'm going to do what you would normally do if you were servicing this thing, sliding under your car and grabbing it. I'm just going to tweak it with a wrench and call her good. But there we are. We're done. Pump is in. We have the right end play for our gear train. We'll do this after we do the valve body. Reason why is I also remember that sometimes in the shift kit there will be instructions for the band adjustments separate to what the factory would say, so we don't have to go back and do it anyway. Worst case, we're going to do it once after we read up on the valve body. Alright guys, I hope you stuck through this with me, because I mean, hey, I made a bit of a gong show out of it. I'm not going to give any excuses. Just haven't done enough of these to really be into it. Like I said, I've got another one to build for the guy. That one's going to be pretty lickety split. I'm still going to check all my clearances, check my end play, and adjust as needed. But that one is going to go together way quicker off camera. This is so any of you, if you so choose, you've seen the tools I use, you've seen my methods, you've seen me screwed up, you see what happens. It's not the end of the world when you screw up. You just go back, fix it, and keep on trucking forwards. So from Dave at Dave's Lawyer Shop Works, this is the full assembly of a C6 in a nutshell over way too many videos. Thank you very much everybody for tuning in. and we'll see you on the next video.